Good evening, everyone, and welcome to EBible Fellowship's Bible study in the book of 1 Samuel. Tonight is study number 79, and I'll read from 1 Samuel chapter 4 and verse 11. And the ark of God was taken, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were slain. And there ran a man of Benjamin out of the army and came to Shiloh the same day with his clothes rent and with earth upon his head. When he came, lo, Eli sat upon a seat by the wayside, watching, for his heart trembled for the ark of God. And when the man came into the city and told it, all the city cried out. And when Eli heard the noise of the crying, he said, What meaneth the noise of this tumult? And the man came in hastily and told Eli. Now Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were dim, that he could not see. And the man said unto Eli, I am he that came out of the army, and I fled today out of the army. And he said, What is there done, my son? And the messenger answered and said, Israel is fled before the Philistines, and there hath been also a great slaughter all among the people. And thy two sons also, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God is taken. And it came to pass, when he made mention of the ark of God, that he fell from off the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck brake. And he died, for he was an old man and heavy, and he had judged Israel 40 years. And once again, we've been spending some time in this chapter, and clearly God is teaching of horrible judgment that he brought historically upon Shiloh, which prefigured the judgment that would come upon Judah and Jerusalem sometime later, some hundreds of years later, and which also prefigures and typifies the judgment of God that has already come upon the churches and congregations of the world. And it is the worst thing imaginable for corporate body, for those that have association with the Word of God, with God Himself, to be His representatives, and for God to come finally at a certain point in time and say, that's enough. That is all. You will no longer be my representative. You will no longer have my presence with you. I am departing. I am leaving you. And God has demonstrated, He has shown that this is how He behaved with national Israel, and He warned the churches that they should not be high-minded but fear, because if He did this to the natural branches, Israel, that corporate entity, then take heed lest He also do so to thee, He said to the Gentiles in the book of Romans. The passage again in 1 Samuel 4, verse 12, And there ran a man of Benjamin out of the army, and came to Shiloh the same day with his clothes rent, and with earth upon his head. And we saw that this man is bringing tidings. He's carrying the message that the battle has been lost. There's been a great slaughter, and the ark of God was taken, as well as very personal information for Eli that his two sons were slain in the battle. And in our last study, we saw the fact that this man of Benjamin, and Benjamin means son of my right hand, fled alone out of the army to carry this news, was indicative of God sending the information to the church itself concerning the end of the church age. That is, when God ended the church age, which happened in 1988, and later, once He opened up that information and revealed it to His people, He did not keep it a secret from the churches. He did not hide the information at all from the congregations, but instead, He commanded that it be proclaimed. If we look at some of the prophets that God gave information concerning the judgment on Judah, and we know that that typifies the judgment on the church. We see that God commanded them to go tell the people of Judah in Jeremiah. It says in chapter 1, verse 6, "Then said I, Lord Jehovah, behold, I cannot speak, for I am a child." And then in verse 7, "But Jehovah said unto me, Say not, I am a child, for thou shalt go to all that I shall send thee, and whatsoever I command thee thou shalt speak. Be not afraid of their faces, for I am with thee to deliver thee, saith Jehovah. Then Jehovah put forth his hand and touched my mouth. And Jehovah said unto me, Behold, I have put my words in thy mouth. See, I have this day set thee over the nations and over the kingdoms, to root out and to pull down and to destroy and to throw down, to build and to plant." And we know that God gave Jeremiah many words to speak to Judah concerning the judgment that was coming with the Babylonians, and he prophesied for many years. And just like the battle which resulted in the loss of the Ark of the Covenant and spiritually making Shiloh desolate, there was a man that God sent out of the battle who came carrying the message of what had happened. And so God left a man, Jeremiah, to declare what he was doing concerning the enemy nation of Babylon. We see that in Ezekiel chapter 2, it says in the first couple of verses, "And he said unto me, Son of man, stand upon thy feet, and I will speak unto thee. And the Spirit entered into me when he spake unto me, and set me upon my feet, that I heard him that spake unto me. And he said unto me, Son of man, I send thee to the children of Israel, to a rebellious nation that hath rebelled against me. They and their fathers have transgressed against me even unto this very day. For they are impudent children and stiff-hearted. I do send thee unto them. And thou shalt say unto them, Thus saith the Lord Jehovah. And they, whether they will hear or whether they will forbear, for they are a rebellious house, yet shall know that there has been a prophet among them. And thou, son of man, be not afraid of them, neither be afraid of their words, though briars and thorns be with thee. And thou dost dwell among scorpions. Be not afraid of their words, nor be dismayed at their looks, though they be a rebellious house. And thou shalt speak my words unto them, whether they will hear or whether they will forbear, for they are most rebellious. But thou, son of man, hear what I say unto thee. Be not thou rebellious like that rebellious house. Open thy mouth and eat that I give thee." So the Lord gave commandment to Ezekiel and sent him to declare the judgment upon his own people. And these verses are there for our benefit, for those that lived during the time of the Great Tribulation, when judgment began at the house of God, the churches and congregations. And when God opened up this information, we shared it. We shared these things. I remember EBible developed a track entitled, "Is the Church Dead?" in which the information concerning the end of the church age and God's command to depart out of the midst of the churches was laid out. And that was very biblical, in keeping with God's commissioning to make sure that the rebellious house hears, that they understand that this is of him, that God is the one who has lifted up the hand of the enemy and has given the enemy the victory over those that profess to be his people. And so too, God makes a point of having a man come out of the battle, a man of Benjamin. And again, Benjamin means son of my right hand. So this would be a man who identifies with Christ, because Christ is the son of God's right hand. And this man is coming with information that is completely negative, completely all about judgment. There is no positive element to this information at all. It is all bad. The Israelites have been smitten. The two sons of Eli are killed. And worst of all, the ark of God has been taken. There's nothing good concerning this information that we find here that the man of Benjamin is reporting. And, that is in keeping with the message that God has given his people to carry throughout time. Yes, the gospel has good news. Yes, the gospel is full of tremendous blessing for those that God saves, but also the gospel is information concerning the wrath of God, the judgment of God. And when God brought judgment on the churches, well, there was no good news for the church itself. No, the news was good if you came out of the church. There was the hope and there was the possibility of maybe God saving you if you had left the church. But the message for the people within the churches and congregations was complete and total judgment. There was no hope for you, no hope at all if you remain in that place, because my spirit has departed, God was telling the church world. And if you remain, if you're stubborn and rebellious and you refuse to hearken to me, then you will be bundled as tares for the burning. And God has followed through with this awful judgment upon the churches. He has bundled them as tares for the burning, and Judgment Day has come on May 21, 2011 is when it began. And immediately, right away, all those that stayed in the churches and congregations were cast into the spiritual fire. It's not a literal fire. There's no literal fire and brimstone falling, but into the spiritual fire of the wrath of God. They are partaking of fire and brimstone. And it was horrible when they were in the church and God had shut the door of salvation upon them while they were in the churches and congregations. That impacted about 2 billion people. Sometimes I think that a few people have bad memories. They don't remember that they themselves were telling people in the churches, look, God isn't there. God has left you. There's no gospel there. There's no light of the gospel. There's no water to drink. There is no salvation. Very, very definite statements have been made by individuals. And yet now God has expanded this same judgment to include all the earth and everything that he did to the church. He now has applied to the whole world, and same thing. No light, no water of the gospel, no Spirit of God working to save in the world, just like it was in the churches and congregations. No salvation. That is the judgment of God. That is the pouring out of his wrath upon the world. That is the cup of the wine of the wrath of God that he first gave to the city called by his name, and now it has expanded to all the earth and to all the inhabitants of the earth. But suddenly now, it is a cruel and heartless and just impossible thing to say that God would do such a thing. That's what a few have begun to say. Well, you can't say this. You can't say that God isn't in the world saving. You can't say that God isn't shining the light, illuminating hearts that are in darkness to become saved. You can't say the door is shut for all the earth. Well, why is it and how is it appropriate and proper and correct to say this of the church, which impacts 2 billion people? Now, that's not a little number. That's about a third of the world's population. Well, someone might say, yes, but they have hope if they come out of the church. Well, the fact is that a minuscule number came out of the church, and certainly none, or hardly at all, will come out now. And so their fate, well, it's already sealed because Judgment Day has come. But looking at it from the perspective of others, well, you know that vast numbers are not going to listen, and there's men, women, and children in the churches and congregations. There's babies there. There's been babies born there 20 years ago, and their families have remained in the church, and they remain in the church. And so, therefore, for the last 20 years, according to the gospel, the understanding that these individuals have that are so hostile to the new information that we've learned since May 21, according to their own gospel and their own understanding, those children have grown up in a situation where salvation has never been possible. And yet, now, you see, the thing is, it's easy to say. Well, actually, it can be easy to say for the children of God, the true believers. It's not easy to say that God's judgment was on the churches. We wouldn't say it at all if it weren't true, if God hadn't done it, if the Bible didn't teach it. But for some, it's easy to say because, well, they're rather independent-minded individuals, and they are outside of the churches, and they don't have too much compassion, perhaps, for those in the churches and congregations. Look, you should be like me and get out. And if not, then this is what you get. Well, no, see, we can't just say that there's no salvation in the churches and then say that all these things, yes, have come upon the churches and congregations, and God has done it to a people called by his own name. You know, God, when he says, let's go to Jeremiah 25. When he makes this statement, people are not understanding what he's saying. In Jeremiah 25:28, and it shall be, if they refuse to take the cup at thine hand to drink, then shalt thou say unto them, thus saith Jehovah of hosts, ye shall certainly drink. For lo, I begin to bring evil on the city which is called by my name. And should ye be utterly unpunished, ye shall not be unpunished. For I will call for a sword upon all the inhabitants of the earth, saith Jehovah of hosts. In other words, since I did do a horrible thing, of course it's horrible, it's an evil thing, it's an evil day when God closed salvation to the churches, since God is saying, I did this to a people that are called by my name, that I have a relationship with. Do you think that I will not do it to the nations of the world? Now, that's the backward thinking that some people have today. They think that God would bring about such horrors upon the churches and congregations, the people called by his name, but he wouldn't dare. He wouldn't dare bring about the same horrors upon the inhabitants of the earth, the people of the world. That is backwards. The point God is making is, if I did something so horrible, so terrible in bringing judgment on my own people, well, you had better believe I will do the very same thing to those not called by my name, to the people out there that are inhabiting the earth that have cared nothing for me. That's the point that God is making. And so we need to humble ourselves. We need to humble ourselves before the Word of God. And we need to recognize, yes, God, he did shut the door on 2 billion people, about. We don't know the exact number of those in the churches, but about 2 billion people. And will he not follow through, especially when he broadcasts to all the world a certain day would be Judgment Day, and that would be the day in which the door shut. That would be the day immediately after the tribulation in which the sun is darkened and the moon will not give its light and the stars will fall. Why would God not follow through? Why would he not be consistent? Why would he not close the door on the world if he had already done it to a people called by his name? It is a very mistaken idea people have that God would not do such a thing. Well, maybe they don't like it because now it's hitting home. They're outside of the church and they weren't affected by the judgment on the churches themselves. So they were a little removed from the situation, but now it's hitting home. It's all the world. It impacts every single human being. And so it's no surprise we're hearing some of the identical statements. It's shocking, but it's really not surprising considering the source of where some of these statements are coming from. Almost word for word, our statements are being made concerning this information that God is no longer saving, that he has brought judgment on the inhabitants of the earth. And the response is almost word for word identical to the response of those within the churches and congregations once they heard that judgment was upon them. Oh, no way. That's not possible. God would never do that to the church. God would never leave the churches and congregations. I just won't believe it. Well, won't you check these things out to see if they're so? No way. I'm not even going to bother. I won't even begin to look into that because it's not even a possibility. Some people are responding in this manner. Well, we've come to the end of our time tonight. I do apologize for our technical difficulties. Lord willing, we'll have a study again tomorrow night at 9 p.m. And we'll try to work on these things and get a backup source of being able to continue the study so that if one method like Skype it is failing us and inconsistent, then perhaps we can continue through another method. But thank you for patiently staying with us tonight, and have a good evening.